Chapter 1, Section 4, Digging Deeper, the Motion of Lithospheric Plates. Types of plate boundaries. Plate boundaries are active. Therefore, they are interesting areas for geologists to study. In the Investigate, you used models to explain how plates interact at plate boundaries. The first model demonstrated what happens when one plate moves beneath another. This process is called subduction. Your common sense might tell you that one of them has to go under the other. In a subduction zone, one plate stays at the surface and the other plate dives down beneath it at some angle. Your second model showed what happens when plates move apart from one another. This occurs at a spreading ridge. Geologists use three descriptive terms to classify the boundaries between plates. There are convergent plate boundaries or collision boundaries, divergent plate boundaries or spreading regions, and transform boundaries or transform faults. At a convergent plate boundary, two or more lithospheric plates move toward each other and collide. A divergent plate boundary exists between two plates that are moving away from each other. At a transform boundary, two plates slide parallel to each other and the relative motion of the plates is horizontal. Seafloor spreading and divergent plate boundaries. You have already read some things about divergent plate boundaries. You learned that mid-ocean ridges are divergent plate boundaries. The mid-ocean ridges are places where mantle asthenosphere rises slowly upward. As it rises, some of the rock melts to form magma. What does melting happen there? Why does melting happen there? To understand that, you need to know that the melting temperature of rock decreases as the pressure decreases. As the mantle rock rises, its temperature stays about the same because cooling takes a long time. However, the pressure from the overlying rock is less, so some of the rock melts. The magma then rises up because it is less dense than the surrounding rock. It forms volcanoes in the central valley of the mid-ocean ridge. Geologists in deep diving submersibles can observe those undersea volcanoes. The water pressure in the deep ocean is very great. Also, water provides a cooling effect on the magma. As a result, the undersea volcanoes behave differently than volcanoes on land. The lava oozes out of cracks in the rocks like toothpaste out of a tube. Some of the magma stays below the seafloor and crystallizes into rock there. All of these new rocks formed by volcanic activity called igneous rocks at the seafloor and below make new oceanic crust. This crust then moves away from the crest of the ridge. In the Investigate, you used a model that showed how the continent moved farther and farther from the spreading ridge. Look back at the world map of lithospheric plates from Part C. In both the North Atlantic Ocean and South Atlantic Ocean, there is no plate boundary along the coastlines on either side of the ocean. That tells you that the Atlantic Ocean is getting wider as time goes on. Why? Because new lithosphere is being created all the time at the mid-ocean ridge, but is not being consumed at the edges of the continents. Does that make you wonder what would happen if you could go back in time and watch the ocean shrink? At some point in the past, there was no Atlantic Ocean. At mid-ocean ridges, lava cools to form new crust made of basalt. Basalt is an iron-rich volcanic rock that makes up the ocean floor. Its iron minerals, such as magnetite, become magnetized. These magnetic minerals have been able to lock in the polarity of Earth's magnetic field. All magnets and materials that have magnetism have magnetic polarity. That is, they have a north and south direction. Rocks with normal magnetic polarity match that of Earth's magnetic field. The north end of the rock's compass needle points toward magnetic north. Other rocks have magnetic minerals with reversed polarity. The north end of the rock's compass needle points towards magnetic south. Beginning in the 1950s, scientists began noticing patterns in the magnetism of rocks on the ocean floor. This pattern is shown in Figure 1. They noticed alternating belts of higher and lower than average magnetic field strength. The belts with the higher strength were of normal polarity. The bands with lower strength were reversed. Okay, so there's the normal magnetic polarity bands, which are the colored bands, and then the reversed magnetic polarity bands are the white bands. There's the magma rising up. There's your lithosphere. And what the magma rising up does is it forms the mid-ocean ridge, as we can see all along the mid-ocean ridge. Figure 1. The formation of magnetic striping. New oceanic crust forms continuously at the crest of the mid-ocean ridge. It cools and becomes increasingly older as it moves away from the ridge crest with seafloor spreading. Okay. In Section A, this is the spreading ridge about 5 million years ago. Section B is the spreading ridge about 2 to 3 million years ago. And C is present day. So this is present day as more layers have been added. In 1963, F.J. Vine and D.H. Matthews proposed the theory of seafloor spreading to explain this pattern. They thought that the matching patterns on either side of the mid-ocean ridge could be explained by new ocean crust forming. The new crust formed at the ridge and then spread away from it. As ocean crust forms, it obtains the polarity of Earth's magnetic field at that time. Over time, the strength of Earth's magnetic field changes. When new ocean crust forms at the center of the spreading, it obtains a new kind of magnetic polarity. A series of magnetic stripes are also formed over time. So anything that's closer to the mid-ocean ridge is newer, and anything that's further away from the mid-ocean ridge is older. So where were we? When new ocean crust forms at the center of the spreading, it obtains a new kind of magnetic polarity. A series of magnetic stripes are formed over time. The rolled paper strips on the dowels of your seafloor spreading model represented this process with alternating black and white stripes. Okay, so whereas these are alternating colors, your model had alternating black and white stripes. Since the theory of seafloor spreading was proposed, core samples of volcanic rock have been taken from the ocean floor. The samples have shown that the age of the rock increases from the crest of the ridge. This is just as the theory predicts. Geologists have also measured both the age and magnetic polarity of rocks on land. They have developed a time scale that shows when the magnetic field has reversed its polarity. The magnetic striping on the ocean floor, let me see if I can scroll back up so we can show that. Okay. The magnetic striping on the ocean floor records the reversals of Earth's magnetic field. As a result, geologists can calculate the average rate of plate movement during a given time. These rates range widely. The Arctic Ridge has the slowest rate. It moves less than 2.5 centimeters per year. The East Pacific Ridge has the fastest rate. It moves more than 15 centimeters per year. I want to be able to see at least one of these figures while we read, and then I'll show the other one. I might even zoom out a little bit just so we can see more. Okay. Geologic data are also used to find the direction of movement of the plates. Surveys of the depth of the ocean floor, mainly since the 1950s, reveal a great mountain range on the ocean floor. This range encircles Earth, as shown in Figure 2. This mid-ocean ridge zigzags between the continents. It winds its way around the globe like the seams on a baseball. The mid-ocean ridge is not straight. It is offset in many places. See Figure 3. Let me zoom out a little bit. The offsets are perpendicular to the axis of the ridge. Geologists combine these findings with knowledge that the ocean floor is spreading apart at mid-ocean ridges. They realize that the offsets are parallel to the direction the plates are moving. They mapped the orientations of these offsets and entered this data into a computer model. From this information, scientists are able to determine the directions of plate motions. Comparisons between GPS measurements and results from geologic computer models show very good agreement. Figure 2 is a map of the world's ocean floor. The crest of the mid-ocean ridge system is shown as a broad light blue right through here. Okay, let me back up. The crest of the mid-ocean ridge system is shown as a broad light blue line throughout the ocean floor. Here's another one. Okay. The flanks of the mid-ocean ridges slope gradually down to the deeper parts of the oceans near the continents. Okay, so they're saying the dark blue is the deeper part, and the light blue is the mid-ocean ridge. And there's several of them. All right, Figure 3. This map shows the network of fractures along the mid-ocean ridge and the eastern Pacific Ocean floor. Because the ocean floor spreads away from both sides of the ridge, the fractures indicate the direction of plate motion. So they're talking about these fractures. Okay. Let me zoom back in a little bit. Let's go to 120 or 130%. Okay. Let me try to go to 121. Maybe I can type it in, or I can select it this way. All righty. Divergent boundaries and breaks in Earth's crust, or rifting. Continental rift boundaries are divergent plate boundaries. They occur where two parts of a continent move apart from each other. The process begins when hot mantle material flow moves upward beneath a continent. Geologists are still not certain how these zones of upwelling begin. As a result, the lithosphere of a continent bulges upward and it is stretched sideways. Eventually, it breaks along a long crack called a rift. See Figure 4. All right. Rift. Okay, there we go. For what a newly formed rift valley. Oh, okay, here we go. See Figure 4 for what a newly formed rift valley looks like. And there's Figure 4. Magma rises up to feed volcanoes in the rift. As the rift widens, nearby ocean water invades the rift. Eventually, a new ocean basin forms. The basin gets wider as time goes on. The East African Rift Valley is a good example of a continental rift boundary. Here, two parts of the African continent are moving apart from each other. As the rift continues to widen, eventually a new ocean basin takes its place. Okay, so here's the upwarping. It forms the Rift Valley, and then the ocean water flows in, and it forms a new ocean basin.